Hello friends, welcome to the second part of the fourth and final installment of the Art of Budgeting. I've decided to divide this last part into two videos so that I don't deplete your attention. We are continuing with our discussion on which ingredients can help us to stick to our budget. I've already discussed the ingredient of tracking your budget, where I said that you need to track your budget on a weekly basis, which also fosters financial discussions in the home on a weekly basis, more frequently than we sometimes normally have these discussions. In this video, I want us to talk about reviewing your budget. Now, budget reviews are not as frequent as the budget tracking. We review our budgets or when there are material changes, and I want to talk about that. And in budget reviews, what we do is we look at a bigger picture. We want to test whether our methodology is still relevant. We want to test whether the structure of our budget, the way we've allocated different categories, is still working for us as a family or you as an individual. Is it still relevant to your needs and your necessary spending capabilities? Yeah. Hello friends, welcome to the second part of the fourth and final installment of the Art of Budgeting. I've decided to divide this last part into two videos so that I don't deplete your attention. Okay, so we are continuing with our discussion on the ingredients that are necessary to help you to stick to your budget. I've already discussed tracking your budget, which I suggested that you need to do on a weekly basis, and this is really tracking and checking. How am I spending? Am I still meeting my budget? And am I still within budget? Do I need to course correct? I've discussed that in the last video. In this video, I want to discuss reviewing your budget. Now, budget reviews are not as frequent as the budget tracking. While the budget tracking is on a weekly basis, budget reviews are done when there are material changes, when there are significant things that really need us to revisit the structure of our budget. It's really when you want to see, is the structure of the budget still suitable for me or for the family if you're budgeting for the family? And that's what review is all about. For example, you look at your categories and say, are there categories that I really want to start spending more on because of certain circumstances, certain changes that have happened in my financial life or in my actual life? Because remember, the budget assists you with your life. It's not just about money, it's about supporting your life, your whole being. And therefore, you wanna start reviewing your budget when there are indicators that there are big changes that have happened that need you to re-look at the way you are approaching the budget. I'll give you an example. You may find that there's been a big event when it comes to your emotion. Maybe you've ignored the emotional category. Remember, we spoke about categories when we were setting up our budget. Maybe you've ignored that part of your life because there was nothing dramatic that needed you to pay attention to it. But if a life event happens, for example, your child is traumatized, your child goes through a traumatic experience, there's now a need to actually spend some resources on assisting them with their emotional health. Maybe sending them to psychology, to therapy more frequently than we may have done before. For example, your relationship is going through difficulties. You are married, we're having some marital problems. We may need some assistance in the form of marriage counselors. Maybe we need to pay extra for that. And therefore, we need to now redirect our budget, review our budgeting, and start focusing a bit more than we did before on the emotional side. Or we've suffered a crime and we've got some trauma coming from the crime, and maybe we need to spend a bit more money on security. We need to spend a bit more money on psychologists. So really, you review your budget when there's big events that have happened. You also review your budget by looking at whether the labels you have put up are still relevant. For example, you may have finished paying off a debt such that whatever you had labeled as a D no longer needs to be labeled as a D, it needs to be labeled as cash, because now I'm financing it through cash and not through debt. And that's really how often you want to review your budget. And maybe to put a time to it, how often really you must do it. I'm suggesting that at the very least, you must do it twice a year. Or as frequent as there are material changes that happen in your life. What are those material changes that can force you to start thinking about reviewing your budget? For example, there may be changes in your income, whether your income has increased or decreased. That's a change in your income. And really changes, you may have found yourself landing on a windfall. Windfalls can come in all forms. For example, you may have received a bonus. It's time to review how we spend, how we deploy that bonus, and really we need to review that. Or you may have received dividends if you are an investor. You may have received pension. For example, you've gone on pension now, you are going on pension, you need to sit, you are expecting a big windfall. And I must say this, as far as possible, do your review before the event happens. If you are able to anticipate the event, for example, you are expecting to go on retirement, or you've heard that you've been retrenched and you may need to tap into your retirement savings because there are no jobs that are going to be found. You want to sit down and start reviewing your budget so that you structure it in a way that supports your changed circumstances. Or you've sold a few assets, you've sold a business, you've sold a car, you've sold a house, and you've got a bit of a windfall, and you're expecting that bit of a windfall. Maybe it's time to sit and review your budget. Or for example, you've liquidated an investment. You were investing for university for your child, and your investment has matured, and now it's time to look and say, okay, fine, let me review our budget spending, etc., etc. You also may need to review your budget whenever there are material changes in your expenses. Material changes could be the change in the cost of living. For example, there's great inflation, the food prices are going up, electricity is going up. You need to review and redeploy a few things, so you need to sit down and start reviewing your budget because of that. Or there are changes in the circumstances of those who depend on your money. There could be somebody who has graduated, somebody who has been assisting with their education. They've now graduated. You no longer need to assist with their education. They are probably starting to find a job. They found a job and now they're going to start earning. It's time to sit down and say, you are now earning, and it's time for you to also contribute to your own income, so that I also to your own expenses, so that I also redirect some of the finances that are going to supporting you with your education or while you are unemployed. Those are big events on those who depend on our money. Or there's somebody who's a dependent, or who can become a dependent, has lost their job. Your spouse has lost their job, so suddenly we need to review our budget here because he or she is potentially becoming a dependent. Now we only have one salary, we need to review our spending. Or your relative has lost income and they now look up to you to be able to look after them. You need to start reviewing your budget because you need to reallocate certain things. And those are the big changes that will necessitate reviewing your budget more frequently than just twice a year, as I've suggested. Right. So as I said, it's quite different from tracking your budget, which is more frequent. But also the other things that may trigger a need for reviewing your budget are things that you pick up when you are doing your tracking. So maybe you are doing your tracking and you realize that, you know what, we are actually over budgeting on groceries, because from our tracking we realize that we spend frequently less than what we've budgeted for. It's time to then review and say, maybe let's reallocate permanently the money that we put for groceries. Let's go and put it in other areas that have been neglected. That's the time to review your budget. It can come up from the lessons that come out from your budget tracking. That's why it's important when you're doing your budget tracking to actually make some notes so that we can use them in our review. They can trigger that, hang on, it's time to review the way we are planning our budget. You also may want to review your budget when you finally reach your financial goals. For example, you may have been putting money aside for education. You may be putting money aside to replace a car. And now that I've reached my financial goal, I've reached it, that money is now released. It means now I have extra money that I used to put towards this financial goal. It's now available. It's now money that's available. Maybe it's time to sit down and review our budget and say, where can we redeploy this additional money that's been released now that we've reached our financial goal? Your financial goal could have been finishing off your debt installments. We had a clothing account. We are now finished paying off that clothing account. There's extra funds that have been released. it's time to review and sit down now and plan again and say, where do you want to redeploy these extra funds? It's very important that you do it up front before this money is released, because I must tell you that when you start feeling rich, you feel cash flush, it's very easy for your mind to blow. You start believing that you have more money than you actually have. And if you think you have more money than you actually have, you're going to start burning a lot of money on unnecessary things. Or if you start deciding only when the money is there, we may start fighting. If you are a family and you're sitting with your spouse, if you only decide when money arrives what to do with the money, we may start fighting about the priorities. And that's why I always say that it's important to actually set up your wish list. Remember, we spoke about wish list a little bit. To set up your wish list up front and say, okay, fine. When we need to review our budget, if we were to ever have a little bit more money, what would be our priorities? And I suggest that up front, as you set up your budget, sit down and look at your wish list. Now, your wish list can come from things that you couldn't afford. When you looked at your budget and you said, you know what, this is all we could afford today. There are certain things that you parked. There are certain things that you postponed. Now, those become your wish list. Or there are things, there are future expenses that you know are coming, but currently we don't afford them, and they become your wish list. For example, you may have little children, or children are little, but maybe younger children who still have to go through high school, who still have to go through university, which you know that in future this is what's going to need more money. It becomes our wish list. So our wish list could be our financial goals. Our wish list could be the expenses that we had cancelled in the past that we really wish to go back to. For example, we may have needed to let go of our helper because we couldn't afford a helper. So it's on a wish list. We are saying the day we are able to afford, our priority will be, would like to have a helper back when we can afford all these other necessities. So it could be something like that. It could be things that we had initially downgraded and they become part of our wish list. We could be really wanting to accelerate our debt. So for example, so these are some of the examples of wish lists that you must go through. And we'll go through some of them when we do our case study. Okay, so then what I'm saying is that you then add this wish list and say, you know what, this is what is currently affordable in our budget, and this is what our budget is based on. But we also have this wish list that the day we have a bit more money, there are some priorities that we want to look at. For example, we had already cancelled gardening, but our wish is to still have an outsourced garden service that comes in once a month, once a week. We'd really love to have that. We've already reduced our helper to being somebody who comes in once a week because we can't afford a full-time helper, but really it is our wish to have a full-time helper. What this does, it helps you that the day we have a salary increase, we have an income increase, we don't have to argue about it. We go back to our wish list, which we've already agreed on. And we say, maybe it's time we can then prioritize some of these wish lists and put them in our new budget. And that's why this is important. And it really helps you. And I'm saying that this is the ingredient that you start with in preparing for your review of your budget. Now, enough about review of the budget and other ingredients. I want to just share with you some of the tips for really sticking to your budget. And this is really what I want to end with. There are some tips that I want to share with you in terms of sticking to your budget. The first thing that I want you to think about is that self-control is exhausting. It is very exhausting. Self-control, by self-control I mean restraining yourself and saying, you know what, I don't want to spend more than I earn, I'm going to stick to the budget. Sticking to the budget is very tiring. In fact, those who understand psychology will know of the marshmallow test that was done on children. And really, on the marshmallow test, what they do is, the student of psychology, they know this a lot. They take two groups of kids and they put a marshmallow in front of them and they say, if they don't eat this marshmallow, within 15 minutes they will be given 2 marshmallows. They'll get an extra one. So it's really testing their willpower. And there's a lot of theories that have come out of this. Some will say the children who manage to stay for 15 minutes and not eat that marshmallow turn out fine in the future. I don't know whether I believe that or not, but there's a marshmallow test out there. Go and Google it. It's an interesting one. But there are some psychologists who have actually twisted it a little bit and said, well, they do a marshmallow test where they force kids and adults to restrain themselves and exercise self-control, and then immediately after exercising self-control, they give them a difficult task, a difficult puzzle to solve. And what has been found is that the ones who actually exercise self-control, in other words, they use all their resources, to their mental power, their willpower, to make sure that they don't eat the marshmallow or they don't indulge in whatever that was put in front of them. They were found to be much slower in dealing and solving a complex problem. And those who actually gave up were actually faster in solving a complex problem. And what they were really talking about here is that willpower can be fatigued. When I've exercised a lot of willpower, without taking a break, I'm then asked to exercise my mind again. I get tired and I slow down, okay? Now, why am I talking about this? I'm saying that if it were possible to minimize your reliance on willpower on your budget, so that you can reserve it for other important things that will need willpower and self-control, I think you should do that. And really what I'm suggesting is that you automate as much of your expenses as possible so that you don't always have to make a decision every time you need to spend. If you automate it, then you know that it is done without my willpower. How do you automate? You could use debit orders, or you could actually ask your employer to deduct certain things. For example, if your goal, for example, is to put more money aside for your retirement, rather than deciding it every month and saying, I'm going to put this much, and exercising your willpower, and sometimes getting to a point where you just don't feel like doing the right thing. Rather go to your employer and say, I want you to increase the deduction to my pension. And you can even give them which pension they must contribute to, your retirement annuity fund. That way you've automated it, you don't have to make that decision. Because willpower, self-control is really, really, really exhausting. You'd rather reserve it for other important things like fighting temptations and sin and all these other things that we face in the world, and trying not to swear at people during traffic. Okay? The other tip that I want to give you is that it has been proven that if you remove the pain of paying, people spend more. What do I mean by that? If I send you to go buy something with actual cash, when you feel the pain of paying, you see actual money coming out, you are likely to feel the pain and likely to watch your spending and be very aware of what you are spending, and likely to spend a little bit less than if I were to send you to just go and pay with a credit card. And it has also been proven that if you want to enjoy spending, postpone the payment. So for example, if I'm paying later, I'm more likely to spend more. And that's why sometimes when you go on holiday, if you've paid up front for your holiday, you enjoy it a bit more than each time you must pay for activities and you see the money going out. Why am I saying this? Why am I talking about the pain of paying? If you're experiencing pain of paying, helps us to focus more on how we are spending our money, helps us to spend a bit less. Maybe it is worthwhile to actually use cash for discretionary spending. Okay, use cash so you can stick to it. So for example, if you use cash for your groceries, you are more likely to stick to your budget, because you go and withdraw. If I plan to spend 3,000 rands on my groceries, I go and withdraw 3,000 rands, and I only go to the shop with 3,000 rands. I am going to spend 3,000 rands. I don't carry cards, I don't carry anything, I just carry the 3,000 rands. It helps me to spend within the budget. But it also then helps me to watch what I'm spending. So I'm actually, because I can see the money going out, I'm going to watch what I'm spending. And of course, if I'm spending on takeaways, I'm also suggesting that you use cash so that you actually spend less and you don't spend more than what you have planned to spend. Okay, on gifts, on going out, on clothing, I'm suggesting that those discretionary ones, you spend less. Of course, I agree with you that some of our spending is linked to our rewards program. And if that's the case, I'm suggesting that you transfer that money to an account, a card that only has that amount of money, so you can then take care of those rewards if they are linked to a card. But that's just a suggestion, that's just a tip. The other tip that I must give you is that don't go shopping for food on an empty stomach. You will end up spending more. You'll end up spending more on takeaways. We've already seen it in the Bible between Esau and Jacob, that an empty stomach really makes us make bad decisions. So maybe don't go shopping on an empty stomach. You might spend a bit more than you put on your budget. I also want to suggest, and this is a tip, that you actually, when you're going for your grocery shopping, do not go to a mall that has many other shops. Go to these shopping centers that just have this particular retailer where you buy. You see a lot of those where there's just a few shops, just a grocery shop and maybe a pharmacy and a restaurant. Because if you go to a mall, malls are designed to make you spend more. You walk in there and start seeing a sale, and start seeing that. And especially, this is a tip that works especially when you are still struggling with managing your spending. And then the other important tip, really, which is the last one, is involve everybody who depends on your money in this exercise of budgeting. It's very painful to be the only one who knows that we must spend less than we earn, we must stretch our money, and those who depend on you don't know, they think money just keeps coming on. The more you involve the people who depend on your money, people you share expenses with in this budgeting, if you get all hands on deck, you actually gonna improve the way people think about money. Everybody will be working together with you and will know what your challenges are, they will know what you've planned, and they will know how much they can really ask for. Okay, and really that's the end of our budgeting series of the art of budgeting. I really hope that you've learned something. I hope you pick up one or two things that you could add to what you already know, and they could make your